Hello everyone and welcome back to another session of Elden Ring PvP and another weapon showcase. Today we're taking a look at Helphen's Steeple. This is a weapon that is dropped by the Tibia Mariner south of Castle Sol. I'll have an image on screen showing the location. Overall, this weapon is decent. It has a lot of good things going for it, but I find it to be disappointing because of a couple of particulars. So let's go ahead and get started with the basics. This weapon requires 19 strength, 10 dexterity, and 22 intelligence to wield, and it weighs 11.5 units. It has Ruinous Ghost Flame for the skill, and you are stuck with that because it is a somber weapon. At plus 10, this weapon has a physical base damage of 247, a magic base damage of 247, a C scaling in strength, E in dexterity, and B in intelligence. Overall, like I said, the weapon is decent. It deals a good amount of damage, and that is the biggest pro of the weapon. The damage on this one is pretty good overall. The moveset on it is fine. It's the standard greatsword moveset. It's the old, reliable greatsword moveset we all know and love. With it, your one-handed R1s and your two-handed R2s are good for catching people who are trying to roll or strafe around to your side, and the running R2s can do some pretty good damage, and if you unlock well going for them, you can aim where you're going and aim to hit with the end of your swing or beginning of your swing to throw your opponent off slightly and possibly get a roll catch a little more easily by doing so. Aside from that, backstep attacks are always satisfying to land, and they do end up coming out a bit more quickly than you'd expect, so that is something that's good to do with this as well. And overall, it's a decent weapon because of those things. Aside from that, it does have Ruinous Ghost Flame for its skill, and with that particular skill, it adds 50 magic damage and 80 frostbite per hit to your attacks. It only lasts 30 seconds, so you will need to rebuff it probably a couple of times through a fight, depending on the length of the fight, of course. And with that, when you go to do the attack, there is an active hitbox. However, the damage from that active hitbox is unfortunately quite low. Typically, I only will end up hitting around 230 to 300 with it, as opposed to if it were a standard R1 value damage, where that's closer to being 500-ish. So it's a little bit disappointing that it doesn't deal too much damage with, buffing the weapon. But it is what it is. Now, for the cons of this weapon, it has all of the standard greatsword class cons. It is not going to have any thrusting attacks, because why would any greatsword other than the Claymore have a thrusting attack? That's just a silly thought. Aside from that, though, the moveset is quite predictable, it is relatively easy to parry, and unfortunately a bit telegraphed. Wish that weren't the case, but it is what it is. Aside from that, though, other cons of the weapon I would actually say would be the weight. This is on the heavier side of things for greatswords at 11.5 units. There are a couple of others at that weight, but at the end of the day, that's getting into heavier weapon territory, so keep that in mind. You'll need to spec your build properly if you want to have this in addition to another weapon. Aside from that, though, there's really not much else to say about it. The weapon is kind of boring, to be honest. I take the same issue with this as I did with the Golden Halberd. When you have your skill be a buff and nothing else, that makes the weapon boring. With this, it at least has an active hitbox when you are using the buff. But with that active hitbox, it can't be used as an attack as well. It doesn't have hyper armor, or at least doesn't have enough hyper armor to trade hits with it. And with that, it ends up being, like I said, kind of a waste for it to even have a hitbox. You're not going to go for that as an attack. It's not a smart thing to do. So it just kind of is unfortunate that that's the case. Aside from that, with it, it would be nice if you had a slight change to your moveset, maybe. That would be a good benefit that would make this weapon stand out from all of the other greatswords, but it doesn't have that. It would be nice if it worked like the Moriam Blade, because they share the same appearance. And when I first saw this weapon, I was excited because, hey, that looks like the Moriam Blade. it's probably going to have the same effect that the Morion Blade has always had. But again, it just doesn't. It, in a way, somewhat reminds me of when they added Ludwig's Greatsword to Bloodborne in place of the Moonlight Greatsword. There was no Moonlight Greatsword until the DLC. Meanwhile, this looks like the Morion Blade, so maybe we'll actually get a Morion Blade, or an equivalent, in the DLC. Either way, that's my rant over. There is one fight left after this one. Let me know what you guys think about this weapon. Do you think that the frostbite that it adds is valuable? Do you think that the weapon could be a bit more exciting if there were some slight tweaks to it? Let me know down in the comments. Either way, thank you all for stopping by. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, then please do leave a like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you guys next time.